Welcome, Michelle. I am so very excited to have you on my podcast, Free to Be Yourself. It has been a long time coming. We've been having conversations about saying when we could connect and get together. So Michelle, I want you to tell all of our listeners and viewers just a little bit about yourself. I will say how we met. We both are in the same podcast group, How to Start a Podcast with Laura Powers, and we connected there. And you take it from there. Tell us about you, Michelle.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for having me on today. It's good to see you and be with you here. And so, yeah, we met in the podcasting class, which has been super interesting. It's a lot of information, but so helpful and fun,
Mhm.
connecting with all these different people and seeing what everybody's ideas are and what their voice is and what they have to offer is just really fun. So I'm glad we got to connect there in that way. A little about me. I currently live in Colorado. I'm a mom and a hairstylist and a podcaster
Yes.
and a wife and a hairapist.
You
Uh,
are a therapist. I just my last client, I told you we ran over a little bit.
yeah,
She's a therapist as well. So she needed a little extra TLC today.
I
So
get it. I
yes,
get it.
yes.
So, yeah. And, going back before all that, I was born and raised in a little town in Michigan, the youngest of 9 kids, and grew up in a very Catholic family,
Mhm.
12 years in a Catholic school. And that was an interesting way to grow up. There's a lot about it I appreciate, but a lot of that didn't fit with me. And I was always the curious one and the one pushing boundaries and the one seeking more. And
Mm.
so when I graduated high school, I decided to not do hair because I thought that that's what you did when you weren't smart enough to go to college, which is horrible. I hate even saying that, but I learned my lesson because I went to college for 5 years, studied biology and sports medicine, which I love learning about,
Mhm.
and realized I was just burnout. It wasn't for me. I had no desire to work in that field in any way, shape, or form, and kind of had my first midlife crisis and
Yes.
moved to Colorado and decided to do hair. And from there, I just started really exploring myself and my beliefs and philosophies and just kind of spreading my wings and coming into my own. So, and then in between that and now, I had some ups and downs and bumps and bruises like we all do. Had
Mhm.
a tumultuous marriage and divorce and learned a lot from that experience as well. So, through all those experiences, I've done a lot of growing and learning and still continue to do so. And this is just another step in that process.
Oh my goodness. So I knew we were meant to connect for a reason, and absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually feel this, and I know this, that when we go through hardship and trauma and difficult situations in life, we can see that in others. We feel a pull towards them. It's like almost like, oh, you're in my same little group. So that was that connection when we connected on there, and it was visual, which is, I love the visual, the platform that we're using for the class that we were a part of. But I know you're very intuitive. I feel that about you, and just you expressing your journey and going the route that you have taken. And yeah, that is definitely stigma around being a hairdresser, is not being smart enough. And it
Yeah.
is such the contrary, because you think about it. I mean, and I love that phrase, a therapist, because not only are you in somebody else's energy for a 2 to 3 hours each person, you are working with the crown chakra, right? So
Mhm.
you are tapping in to all of this energy and to, for those listening, the crown chakra is basically what opens us up to the divine, to spirituality, and it's also the opening place in our whole chakra system. So if you're working with a client who maybe is going through a lot, you could be picking that up as an empath.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
had to
speak
learn.
about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So hair itself also holds a lot of energy. So if you think about it, especially you have longer hair, that hair down on the ends has been there for years and it holds a lot of
Yes.
energy. So not only am I sensitive to the individual's energy, but the hair
Mhm.
itself holds a lot of energy. And so I tell you, it is the more people I see in a day. So if I have 7 haircuts that are an hour each, and that's 7 people, it is far more exhausting than if I filled that 7 hours with 3 clients, that had a couple of hours for each appointment. And I think it is that adjusting and readjusting to each individual's energy. So I actually learned from Laura years ago, had just said, you need to protect yourself. So
Yes.
imagine that you have some protection or a shield against any energies that aren't in align with yours. And so that you're not absorbing that too much, as well
Mhm.
as I would visualize as I'm washing their hair, any energy that's coming out of that crown chakra or out of their hair that isn't serving us in a positive way, that it washes right away down the drain. So it is, and it's interesting too, as a seasoned hairstylist and Hairapist, I will tell you that if I have a new client come in and if I sense anything that doesn't feel right, I don't accept them as a client. I just say, I don't think we're a good fit,
Mhm.
or I think, that there's somebody else that might work better for you. And that took time to learn that it's okay to do that. And I've never regretted it, ever.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. And would you say you learned that because of the repercussions of having clients that negatively affected you
Yes.
energetically and
Yes.
emotionally? You
One,
come home and yeah.
yeah, 100%. I just realized that, I mean, and it took 15 years before I thought, I don't have to have this person as a client, or I can say no. Um, because if there were certain clients I would have, there's only a few that I've had to fire, but it was for reasons that I would be physically ill
Mm.
prior to them coming in, knowing they were coming in, and even after they had been in. And when I say physically ill, I mean just um, confused, moody, nauseous,
Yeah.
headaches, heavy feeling, distracted. All of that would consume me even a week or two prior to them coming in. And some of them would affect the entire salon, not just
Mhm.
me, where I started having other stylists dreading seeing that certain client coming in before. So just realizing it's okay to say no. I'm not a bad person or a bad hairstylist or a bad business person for knowing what's healthy for me and how to have those clear boundaries with clients. And when you make that space, a new client comes in that's better suited for you. So I've never suffered in a business sense from that at
That's
all. It's only kind of reinforced that I did the right thing, for
that's
sure.
so that's beautiful. You're speaking on a topic very near and dear to my heart, boundaries and learning boundaries. I was actually just sharing with my mom the other day. Are you familiar with Terry Cole's work?
No. Mm-mm.
I will send you some of her amazing podcasts, and she is basically a boundaries expert. She's also a psychologist, and she just wrote a book, Boundary Badass, or it's some catchy title. I got to get her book, but she has courses, and I've taken her courses. And one thing that I'm going to pull from just a recent podcast that I listened to her speaking about is, we're not taught how to have boundaries. We are not taught. It is not something that is innately, ingrained in us or inherited in us, unless we have conscious parents who are able to teach us this. But the people who are my clients and in my circle, and I'm sure you can say this for you too, is boundaries is something we have to learn. And the other thing around that is they don't feel good when you begin using them.
Yeah. You know what? Boundaries has been a topic that has come up in my life repeatedly since a child. When I was younger, I didn't understand what it was. And I don't think it was anything that I consciously even knew what they were until I was
Mm-hmm.
going through my divorce and therapy in that way,
Mm-hmm.
relating to the divorce and how to have boundaries with my ex-husband. And I thought, I was like, what is this? And I read Codependent No More,
Yes.
and I was like, oh my God, is this book about me? And so learning about what codependency means and then how that ties in with poor boundaries. And you're right, like once you understand it's something you need to do and you're trying to figure out how to do it, it's the most uncomfortable, horrible thing. And you are constantly tested. So you think, oh, I did it. You did it once. And it's like, okay, I'm good. Like that person will respect my boundary. No, they won't. And so you have to do it. It's like, oh, I have to do this again and again and again. And just when you think you're good at it, it's like the universe is like, let's see how you are with this one. And they throw a little curveball and you're like, oh, just, but
Yes.
it's never ending. And I think it is not taught to us, in a class or verbally. And I think, at least for me growing up, I don't think I had a good model for it.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to model that for my daughter now is still challenging because I'm no pro at it. I'm still working
Mm-hmm.
on it. I have to do it every day in some way, shape, or form. So, but hopefully she'll have a little bit better of a start on it than I did. And it might be come a little more naturally for her as she grows up.
I am confident that you are an amazing mother. And just the fact that you
Trying.
have awareness and you are seeking that within in your own self, that yes, you are modeling for her beautifully. How old is she?
She just turned 16.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
that is a very important time in life to know boundaries, physical boundaries, boundaries with our sexuality and being around, partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, just holding yourself. Me personally, man, going back, I mean, I really needed boundaries and I had not 1 ounce of them, not one
Yeah.
ounce.
Hmm.
And yes.
It's when that happens too, it's you lose so much of yourself and sense of
Mm-hmm.
self that
Mm-hmm.
you don't even know what your boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
Where is your space that should be respected, because it's just kind of leaked out everywhere that you need to learn how to rein it back in and guard that for good
Mm-hmm.
reason. But I
Yes,
do see her doing that, where she almost taught me in a way sometimes, where I saw her um, with certain people in her life she was giving more than they were. She
mm-hmm.
was really the only one giving, and she just realized it and said, I'm not a doormat. I'm not doing that anymore. And she was young at that time. I want to say she was probably 10 or 11. And in my head, was like, wow. And I said, you're right. You're not a doormat.
Mm.
Good for you.
So
So
good.
I think that was really the first time where I really noticed it and thought, yeah, way to go, girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, you spoke of divorce.
Mhm.
That is something on Free to Be Yourself here, will be a topic often, giving a voice to and around and through. Um, do you care to speak to any about your divorce and what you gained coming out of it?
Yeah. So um, I so it's my daughter's father who I
Mm-hmm.
met. My daughter at the time was 2 years old when I met my ex-husband. Her
Mm-hmm.
birth mother had passed away the year prior. So I had met her dad at a mutual friend's wedding, and he was very charismatic. There was just something about him. And we started dating, and it was like a whirlwind romance, but there were red flags early on. Um, and that codependent thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought everybody has problems. He lost his wife, he's been through a lot of trauma, and that if I could love him and model for him, I had done some work on myself thinking that I had arrived, but here I am in this horrible situation. And I just ignored the red flags and thought if I loved him enough, I could help him. And within a couple of years, I realized that wasn't true. And I knew I needed to leave. And at this point now, I had taken on the role of mom to my daughter. And so it was really complicated. We had a common law marriage,
Mm-hmm.
which in Colorado is legal, like a legal marriage. You don't need a marriage certificate. It holds the same weight. So I had to legally get divorced. And luckily in Colorado, I hadn't adopted my daughter yet. And that's a whole other story, but it had to do with um, him wanting to wait on that for some financial reasons. And so here I am deciding to divorce him in this weird, we're common law married, but it's a legal marriage. And in Colorado, even if you haven't adopted a child, if they know you as mom, if you're recognized as mom or as a parent, then you have legal rights as if you had adopted them. And we're one of the few states that allows that. So
Wow.
I had all very quickly gotten a restraining order, filed for divorce, and it was just mess. It was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And I sought some counseling from a woman named Lisa Hall, who is amazing. She's a licensed clinical social worker, I believe, and her business here in Colorado is called Divorce Wise. And she counsels people through separation and divorce in a very non sterile therapeutic way. So she is very real, down to earth. She grew up with divorced parents. She had been divorced and a single parent and remarried, and counseled a lot of people through the same thing. So she was very real and down to earth and had very grounded advice. So she was a saving grace through that. And she started addressing boundaries with me. And I worked with her for 2 years before I actually successfully created boundaries. Because even after we were divorced, which was a long, drawn out process for many reasons, we were still in a dysfunctional relationship. We were
Mm-hmm.
still in a codependent, abusive relationship. He had a hold on me, and I felt like anytime he'd text, I had to respond because if I didn't, he would reap havoc in not only
Yeah.
my life, but he would involve my daughter because it was manipulative, and he knew that I would want to protect her. So I would try to appease him, and it never worked. So it was 2 years of working with Lisa until I got that I needed a firmer boundary with him. And she taught me something that I repeat all the time, which is speak your truth, release the outcome. So speaking your truth is a boundary. You can set that boundary because you know it's right for you,
Mm-hmm.
and release that outcome is whatever somebody else chooses to do with that is theirs. And you just keep focusing on what is your truth and what is right for you. So even after I learned that and was able to do that, it was still challenging because it was such a toxic situation, and he was very ill, um, mentally and spiritually and
Mm.
physically too,
Mm.
so he had a lot of layers of an onion of
Mhm.
issues.
Yes.
So it was always kind of dealing with whatever he was throwing out that day, but I learned to do it in a way that really was healthier for me. But it took a long, long time for
Mhm.
that to actually manifest for me. And you know, sadly, it was, let me think about this, almost 7 years ago that he passed away and is no longer here.
Oh
So
my
that kind of
goodness.
shifted things in another direction too.
Wow, Michelle. So
Yeah.
you've been through it. You've been through it, my dear. Well, yeah, I just had to take a moment with all of that because that energy is heavy
Hmm.
to um to process to process it. And I know you are, and I know you're healing, and I know you are definitely seeking as well. And I love that you are using the platform of having a podcast to share your story, to use your voice, to to really give it the space that it deserves, because we all learn through the difficulties that we go through. And I think when we can be honest and vulnerable and share those with others, and you never know who you're impacting with
Hmm.
what you just shared there. But I know I can feel it, because that's why I had to take a moment, that there's many people out there who have had an ex who's no longer physically in this world, but still to um, just to carry that. And so I know that you've moved out of that, and I'm excited to hear you say you have a husband now. And
Hmm.
I see love all over you. And are you grateful? Can you look back now and have gratitude for what you've been through? Because what you have now. So if you could speak to the polar opposites of the two relationships that I feel like you've had.
Yeah, well, I think with any life experience that's traumatic. So, we've all been through a few, I'm sure. Everybody's,
Mhm.
while they may be different, but we've all, nobody gets just this free ride through life.
Yes.
So I do believe, and it wasn't something until I was a bit older, like looking back at some trauma from childhood, it was as an adult where I could see where there there were things I took from that were good. My intuition
Mhm.
and empathy is one of them. So I think for this other experience, having been through what I had been through, number one, it taught me I'm far stronger than I ever thought I could be. When I
Yes.
look back now and think about some of the things that I got through, and I had no idea how I was going to get through them. Even, I mean, at one point during the divorce, my attorney fees were so much because there wasn't more than a day or two where the police weren't involved or a lawyer wasn't involved or a court appointed like parenting coordinator. I forget what they're called now.
Mhm.
Thank God I can't remember all these court terms. But I mean, for years, it was not more than a day or two without something, a fire needing to be put out. So that was very traumatic in and of itself. And at one point, I think I was 50 some $1,000s in credit card debt of attorney fees, and I had 30 some $1,000s of outstanding attorney fees. My attorney was a saint. She kept me on because she cared about my daughter and I,
Mhm.
even though I couldn't pay her. And I don't know any attorney that does that. And it was not an easy case. There was always something crazy going on. So I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent from week to week and all of that, but it
Mhm.
it just worked out. I just kept moving in that direction that I knew was the right thing to do, or tried to make those right choices one at a time and trust that it would lead to the right place. And it did,
Yes.
but, it was really hard. And after my ex passed away, it was probably a year or two of being in a fog because I
Mhm.
think it was PTSD, quite honestly. Like, and I met my current husband in that window, which is crazy because I think for him, what he was learning bit by bit about the history or what we had been through, and knowing that I have this daughter who has now lost her two birth parents, her story is an amazing
Yes.
story in and of
Yes.
itself. She is on her
What's her
own
what's her
journey.
what's her name? Do you care to say her first name?
Her first name is Maybe. It's spelled Maeby, and her birth parents named her after a character on Arrested Development. Yeah, and I
Wow.
love that name. It
Yes,
suits her so well,
I do
and
too. I
she's an
do too.
amazing soul.
She feels she's been here many times. I feel like
Yes.
she's a very old soul. I feel that she is yeah, when she looked at this life coming in, she's like, okay, I know it's going to have this grandiose of, trauma and this and that and the other, but just for her energy, this suits her exactly where she's supposed to be. And what a perfect mother you are,
Mm, well,
the divine mother you are to her,
mm,
truly. And that's what it is. So maybe I love that. Thank you
yeah,
for
yeah.
sharing that.
She's amazing. I learned so much from her, and
Yes.
feel quite honored that we're on this journey through this
Mm-hmm.
lifetime together, truly.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess, meeting my current husband, his name is Scott. We we had so much in common, and yet we're so different in a lot of ways too. So I think we support each other in a lot of ways, and we challenge each other in a lot of ways, which is always good. And we
Mm-hmm.
continue to grow together in positive ways. So he's a great guy. He's very kind and thoughtful. He is a great stepdad to Maybe. They have a
Mm-hmm.
very special relationship. They have their own thing going on, and it's really a blessing to sit back and watch them together.
Yes.
They both are musicians, and so they share that love of music, and they're both soccer players. So then they get going about soccer. And I think, for Scott, part of that bond with her, I believe, is about his birth father, while he's still alive, chose to leave his life at a very young age.
Mm.
And he has been raised by who he calls dad, is his stepfather.
Okay.
So he has, I think, some understanding of
Mm-hmm.
that. And so I think sometimes too he feels that bond with her over, I understand somewhat what it's like to have that birth parent missing, but yet have this person who steps in who is your parent.
Yes.
They meet all those needs and requirements. So it's just amazing how the universe works.
I was gonna say there's no accidents. There's no accidents with any of this. It's all orchestrated at
Yeah.
some moment, and that's so beautiful. Did you find because it sounds like the way you're describing everything is your relationship to your first husband, there was a lot of trauma bonding and trauma in this relationship. Was
Yes.
it difficult to transition into a relationship where you didn't have that charge, that energy? Did it seem not as exciting as at first? Or did it feel, or why don't you, I'll let you just share from that point.
I think for me, no, I think I didn't trust it. You know, I
Yes.
think for
Yeah.
me, I was just waiting for the crazy to come out at some point. So I think, and he would probably tell you, I kept him, at arm's
Yes.
length a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I think just energetically, I wasn't 100% available mentally and everything
Mm-hmm.
else, being in that fog, that kind of PTSD mode. So I think all of that combined was, trust, that lack of trust in,
Mm-hmm.
is this genuine? And then me even being open and truly open and available 100% emotionally. So I think there was kind of this period of time where I think Scott was more understanding and patient and accepting of it being what it was, which is just, this is how much I have to give at this point. And after a couple of years, that was, that guard fell down
Mm-hmm.
and I was more open. And I think then it was, I could trust this. This is who he is. This is real. I'm in a better space. This foggy veil has lifted and time to move forward.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And that's, coming my first marriage. So I've had two marriages. So similar. The first one was complete trauma bonding, all of that stuff. And I had to leave kind of like in the middle of the night situation with my two young sons. And when I met my second husband, it everything you just said, and I'm so curious about relationships and all of that, because I truly believe the ones that we go through, the painful ones, like I spoke of earlier, they are our greatest teachers. I know that sounds like in a kind of a depraved or dark way, but for me personally, the trauma that I went through in my relationship to my first husband, and then actually in a dating relationship, fast forward after my second marriage, um, really revealed parts of me that needed healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then to speak of my second marriage, my longest relationship that I've had thus far, a very very gentle man, amazing, loving, trustworthy. Like, I didn't trust it. I didn't trust it for many years. But I so desperately needed, and that's the key word, is I needed him. I needed to feel like a sense of safety and security. And it did. It brought me to a place where I could begin to, I would say halfway through the marriage is when I really began to start my own journey through healing, after I had quite a bit of self-sabotaging behaviors show
Mm-hmm.
up. And that was really, for me to look back and see that it was coming from a place where I was like, I don't even deserve this great of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let me see how I can, do this or that. And it all pointed back to myself and how
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel free in myself. I didn't even feel good about myself. I didn't feel like I was worthy in just being myself. So, and my story continues to unfold is why I had
Yeah.
to leave that marriage. And it was a very scary and painful decision I made. But it came from a place of, I knew that I had to experience what it's like to truly care for myself
Mm.
and trust. And there was other things there. The relationship took a whole different energy to it. It felt very, I could not be doing the work I'm doing today and still be in that marriage. I'll leave that as that for sure. And I was called out of it. And so the question I love to ask all my guests, I began with 3 questions, and then after doing a couple of these, getting started, I'm like, really, it's just this one first question. So for you, Michelle, when in your life have you felt the most free to be yourself?
Oh man, let me think about that for a second. I think it's not one moment, but maybe two. So
Mhm.
I think when I was really young, probably under the age of 4 or 5. Again, being from a big family, I think you kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes. And
Mhm.
there was some trauma that happened when I was younger. There's a lot of, for whatever reason in our neighborhood, there was a lot of sexual predators and stuff like that. So several of us in the neighborhood had sexual trauma as a kid. But I think I had my Aunt Margaret. I'm gonna get teared up. It's so crazy
Oh,
how that comes up. But
yeah, it does. And
my
well,
Aunt Margaret was such a beautiful soul, and she didn't have children of her own. But it's kind of a side tangent. But she was a teacher in Puerto Rico for a while, and she called all her students her kids. And then, you know, she had 9 nieces and nephews from my mom, which was her sister, and then her other sister. I think they had 7 kids in their family. So she had a lot of kids in her life, and she had such a strong, nurturing vibe to her,
mhm.
such a beautiful soul, and such a beautiful spirit for life. Like she loved life and loved living and was just this ball of energy. So there were times where I would go spend the night at my Aunt Margaret's house or do different activities with her when you're like the only kid. And I felt so comfortable and uninhibited and
Mm,
loved, just purely loved. And there was something about being in the presence of her energy that just made you feel like perfect. So I have to say for the
that's
earliest would be that time and those moments being with my Aunt Margaret. And
mhm,
I get there are certain people that I come across in life that I feel her energy through, which is
mhm.
so cool.
It
But
is, yeah.
and I think of her as a mentor, and I wish that she was here sometimes so I could chit chat with her about things, but she was just pretty amazing. So I think then, and I think now that I've gotten comfortable enough in my own skin, I'd say, over probably the last several years, where I feel more confident in spreading my wings and being unapologetic about who I am and what I'm curious about and
Mhm.
things I want to just explore. And I don't care what other people think as much anymore, which is so liberating. I love it.
It is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And she's one of your spirit guides.
Yeah. I
So
believe that.
she really is. And she does come through other people. She actually shows, I'm seeing the color green, and so I see you at the kitchen table with her. She had like a tablecloth, and you guys would sit there and do like some crafts, or you would be coloring. And she would always like touch you, like she would touch the back of your
Mm.
head. She was affectionate to you in a way that was a sense of safety for you. And thank you for sharing, just acknowledging that you have had sexual trauma that has been around you. That is definitely, I don't want to skip over that. And I just want to
Mm-mm.
say thank you for, just just using your voice around such a heavy energy,
Yeah.
because that is.
I'm a pretty transparent person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for whatever reason, I'm pretty open. I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I
Yes.
think it's a good thing because I feel like so many people don't feel that they can share that. Like they either hold shame
Mm-hmm.
around the trauma, especially sexual trauma. And I don't think there's any shame in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of my path. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the part when I was so angry about it for so long. And so, I mean, it just affects your life in so many ways. It's not a temporary thing that
Mm-mm.
happens. And something I think I tried to run from, live hard, live fast,
Yeah.
live crazy,
Yes.
but you can't run from it. It's
Mm-mm.
there until you kind of face it and address it. And I think for me, it became a part of my identity and my armor and my toughness. And it's interesting because that theme has come up in many lifetimes with me. I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to Laura Powers about that actually, about
Yeah.
past lives. I can't tell you how many lives I've had where I found my value in surviving something toxic or abusive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it dawned on me, you don't have to survive to be powerful or to
No.
be strong. And it was like a light went off. Like you don't have to go through the suffering and the horrible things to show that you are strong. Like you can
I love that.
be strong without having to like quote unquote earn it in that way, which was interesting. So I feel like that's going to be released now. And so whatever life is next will be, free of it from this point on and then into the next lifetime too, which is an
Yes.
exciting thing to realize and let go of. So if being open
Absolutely.
about that, I always welcome if anybody needs to share or wants to share,
Mm-hmm.
or I can be of service in any way around that. I am more than happy to help because it's a reality for a lot of people, men and women,
It
and
is.
the more we talk about it, the better, because if it just stays hidden, then it gives more power to it. So I think that if we can talk about these kind of things and be open
Mm-hmm.
about it, and especially share how we've gotten through them and around them and over them, then
Yes.
that's a good thing. That's a good
Yes, it
thing.
is. And I agree with all of that. And definitely, I too was around it. Um, and this is another layer to speak around it, is even if it personally doesn't happen to you, if it happens to somebody in your family, you can absorb that energy. And that is definitely, that has been shown to me and in my family. And it's something that, I mean, and that is a very, very big thing to even try to digest and to see where it comes from. But in tracing back my own personal sexual trauma, um, it was no wonder because I was so highly attracted to sexuality and things of the body from such a young age that it it just fits. It just makes sense that there was something that had happened that I had been around.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's I'm excited for both of us in this journey with our podcasts and using our voices and talking about these matters, that they do matter,
Yeah.
and nobody's immune to any of this. I know in a lot of my work with my clients, we peel back the onions, just as you spoke of earlier, and that core, that sense of like where is our that deepest core wounding? What is it? When we peel all the other stuff back, because it as we grow and as we're aging and all of that, we throw on all sorts of things
Mm.
to cover, and
Yeah.
and it's when we get to this life, hopefully there's a lot of younger listeners out there that, and like your daughter you spoke of, who can wake up early and not see or feel the need to cover and to hide in this seat of shame that I speak about, and have to, it's okay to let that come up and to work with that heavier energy. And I love that you said, just, it's not a fault. It is
Yeah.
not something to be shameful around. It's not something that we chose. So, but my goodness, Michelle, this has been so beautiful. I love that we've connected. Now it all makes total sense to me.
I know. I
Just
know.
like our paths and
Yeah.
everything.
We
So,
didn't get to discuss a lot about this kind of stuff in the podcasting class, but that first session
mhm.
I was like, oh, serendipity. There are so many reasons that this group is in this group together. It was
Yes,
like, holy
yes.
gosh, this is awesome. Yeah.
And it is. And
Yeah.
like attracts like, and our vibrations are the same attunement. And so of course we're going to come across our paths. And
I,
for all of those, so tell our listeners how they can find you and the name of your podcast, my dear.
so my podcast is 1111 Calling, which for me, what that represents, a couple of things. I named my hair studio 1111.
Mhm.
It was at a time that I was starting my own studio, and ones represented manifesting and new
Yes.
beginnings. So I thought it was appropriate to name my new hair studio that. And I wanted to carry that over, working as a Hairapist. I thought, I just want to take all these great conversations I have with clients somewhere different, So I
Yes.
thought, a podcast, I can continue to have all these amazing conversations with people and explore life and interests together
Mhm.
with a wider audience. And so I really knew I wanted the podcast to have 1111 in it. And I thought calling represents not only, hey, it's 1111 calling, numbers calling on you to be
Yes.
conscious of your thoughts and what you want to manifest, me literally calling people to talk about things, and then really wanting people to listen to and honor what's calling them, what the universe is calling them to do in this
Mhm.
moment. It can change, we're called to do
Yes.
many things in life, but to really honor people's calling and what they are called to do, because it comes in so many different shapes and forms, and none is too big or too small. So really just seeing, for my guests, what is it that they were called to do, and how did they recognize that and have the courage to do it? So I am in the process of setting up my website. So when that's complete, I will let you know
Yes.
uh, how to, and it'll be on my site, and then I'll have that link for you. And for now, if you needed to reach me for anything, you could contact me at mhaynes5280@gmail.com. That's M as in Michelle, Haynes is HAYNES 5280@gmail.com.
That's so beautiful. Well, thank you, my dear.
Thanks
And
for having me.
one thing I almost forgot, because I don't want you to feel slighted in the least, but I offer a tarot reading to each of my guests here on the
Awesome.
podcast. And what I
Cool.
would love to do for you is to tell you what your lifetime tarot symbol is. And what I would need to do that is, I just need your birthday. So I need the month,
Okay.
date, and the year.
That is May 20th, 1971.
Oh, girl,
I know.
we're just a couple of days apart. I love it. So are you also going to be 50 this year?
I am.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. You as well.
Yes, that's so awesome. So let's see, we have 19 and 6. So you, oh, I love it. Okay. So what I just did is for all of you out there listening, viewing, to find out what your lifetime number is. Actually, numerology, you take your birthday and you deduce it to a whole number. And so you are a 7, my dear. And that in the tarot, as I'm quickly picking through my cards, is the Chariot. And I'm going to show you this amazing card. And the Chariot is all about forward movement. It's all about being ready and prepared and excited. Here he is right there. So here's the Chariot, Michelle. And this, so just like you are a Taurus, your sun sign, this is your tarot symbol. And it's referred to as your lifetime tarot symbol. And so you see this charioteer is completely embellished. She's got her chariot already, or he, she, they, ready to go out on an adventure. And this adventure is actually been quite planned out. And because you see the city behind that you are leaving. And as you're doing this, you are being guided by your intuition. So you see there's no reins, but there's a wand here in the right hand. And it's like you have this energy compelling you forward. And the 2 sphinxes in the front represent just the duality of life. And just as we spoke about, these darker aspects of ourselves, we spoke about shame. We spoke about, needing to have boundaries for certain reasons, for protection. And that's the shadow self. That's the darker side. And then with the lighter side, that is the hope. That is 1111. That is like, divinely being protected by the angels and all of that. So for you, my dear, you are meant to be this forward moving being who is all about creating change. And you do it in such a way that, so each stop that you go to, it's like you are received with these gifts, a gift of offering, and it's you who you embody. So you are truly the gift. And so just go and be your fabulous self today. Be free to be yourself, Michelle, as you are. And I love that. I love that
it
you
too.
are.
Thank you so much. I love
You
that.
are
Thanks for doing
so
that card.
welcome. You're
It
welcome.
speaks to me in many ways.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, hun.
You're welcome. And we will do this again. We will catch up maybe in 6 months, and we will, let our viewers know like how we're doing as newbies in this podcast world. So
that sounds like a great idea.
So
I love
wonderful.
it. Awesome.
All right.
Have a great day, Jamie.
You too. Thank you, Michelle. Bye-bye.